Coming up on Arirang News, President Moon Jae-in looks back on what his administration has done to make the economy more fair by changing the way public institutions make contracts and using public facilities to help the people prosper. Japanese media note President Moon's first comments on the trade dispute with Japan, but they're sounding doubtful that the Japanese government will do anything but ramp up the measures for the time being. And lawmakers in the South Korean parliament start a three-day session in which they'll question government officials about issues including diplomacy, national security, and the economy. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on our afternoon newscast. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea's National Assembly kicked off a three-day round of Q&A sessions this afternoon. Through Thursday, rival lawmakers will be grilling government officials, including Prime Minister Lee Na-kyun, on a range of topics from diplomatic affairs to the economy. Tuesday's session is focused on political issues and North Korea. Some things brought up so far include the recent security lapse that saw a North Korean fishing boat enter South Korean waters undetected, as well as the drive for denuclearization. Also up for debate are the measures the government is taking to respond to Japan's recent trade restrictions. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's younger sister, Yo Jong, has long been seen at her brother's side, making sure everything's arranged just right at different events and taking care of protocol. But now it seems she's received a major promotion. Oh Soo-young has the details.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister now appears to be the ninth most powerful figure in the regime. Seated just 4 seats to the left of her brother, Kim Yo Jong sat in the front row at a memorial on Monday in Pyongyang Gymnasium, marking the 25th death anniversary of their grandfather and the founder of North Korea, Kim Il-sung. She was among 10 of the top officials, including senior officials of the ruling Workers' Party, Park Bong-ju, Lee Man-gon and Lee Soo-young. Chae Ryong-hae, who heads the country's rubber stamp parliament, and Premier Kim Jae-ryong were also at the event. Experts believe Kim Yo-jong's seating position indicates she wields a lot more power than she used to.
As she was seated among the vice chairman of the party's central committee, as well as its politicians, it's possible Kim Yo-jong's status has been raised from a candidate of the Politburo to an actual member.
Kim Yo-jong is currently the first vice director of the Workers' Party's Propaganda and Agitation Department, working under its nominal director Park Kwang-ho. Up until the Hanoi summit between the US and North Korean leaders earlier this year, Kim Yo-jong's role mainly consisted of making arrangements and overseeing the order of events for her brother. However, according to Jong-un, the head of the Intelligence Committee at South Korea's National Assembly, it seems that baton has been passed to former pop star and now Deputy Propaganda Director Hyun-jin. In recent weeks, Kim Yo-jong has stood next to key officials in diplomatic events, being the 7th person in line to shake hands with Chinese President Xi Jinping when he made a state visit to Pyongyang, and also being accompanied by bodyguards, an uncommon feature for deputy directors. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The U.S. State Department says there are no plans for American diplomats while they're in Europe this week to meet with officials from North Korea. There had been speculation about a meeting with the U.S. Special Representative for North Korea, Stephen Biegun, in Brussels and Berlin this week, and the fact that the leaders of the North and the U.S. agreed at the DMZ just recently to resume talks on denuclearization. But a State Department official told South Korea's Yonhap news agency that there are no such plans. Biegun is expected to visit NATO headquarters in Brussels on Tuesday and speak to officials about ways to resolve the North Korea nuclear issue. He'll also meet with his South Korean counterpart, Lee Do-hun, and European officials on that issue as well. A U.S.-based nuclear weapons expert claims the Trump administration might be fine with accepting North Korea as a nuclear state. The Washington Post published an article on Monday quoting Jeffrey Lewis, a scholar at the Middlebury Institute's Center for Non-Proliferation Studies, who said the administration could be changing its mind. Lewis focused on the remarks President Trump made following his encounter at the DMZ late last month with Kim Jong-un. Trump did not mention denuclearization at all, highlighting only, quote, deliberate speed. The idea that Washington might negotiate a nuclear freeze with Pyongyang was the subject of a recent article in the New York Times as well. With tensions rising between the U.S. and Iran over Iran's uranium enrichment, Vice President Mike Pence has warned that the U.S. will continue to pile economic pressure on Iran through crushing sanctions. Lee Sung-jae reports.
With Iran threatening to take major steps away from the 2015 nuclear accord that the Trump administration abandoned last year, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence said Monday that Washington is ready to protect U.S. personnel and citizens in the Middle East, adding it will continue to bring pressure to bear to Tehran.
We hope for the best, but the United States of America and our military are prepared to protect our interests and protect our personnel and our citizens in the region. We will continue to oppose Iran's malign influence. We will continue to bring pressure on their economy. And under President Donald Trump, America will never allow Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon.
Pence again accused Iran of attacking tankers near the Strait of Hormuz, adding that Tehran also downed an unmanned American drone. Pence said Iran has been increasing even more of their malign activity and violence in the region, with industry sources reporting Iran's crude oil exports dropped in June. The country's oil minister blamed Washington for destabilizing the oil market on Monday, saying the U.S. was using the oil as a weapon to pressure Iran. However, Bijan Zaghani remains hopeful that oil exports will improve, adding it's not the price of oil that's a concern, but the amount it can ship out. This comes as the International Atomic Energy Agency has confirmed Iran has enriched uranium beyond a 3.67% purity limit, a move announced by the Iranian government last weekend. The IAEA said it verified the enrichment level using online enrichment monitors, and samples had also been taken on Monday for analysis. It added Iran had informed the agency that the enrichment level was about 4.5%, but could be higher. Lee Sung-jae, Arirang News.
So what exactly is in the Iran nuclear deal that the Trump administration abandoned and Iran is now violating? Our Kim Da-mi takes a closer look.
It all dates back to the summer of 2015, when Iran agreed to a long-term deal on its nuclear program with world powers, including the US, the UK, France, and Germany. With Iran's alleged efforts to develop a nuclear weapon, the international community decided it had to act. Under the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, Iran agreed to limit its sensitive nuclear activities, such as slashing its stockpile of low-enriched uranium by 98%. Enriched uranium is used to make fuel for nuclear reactors, but is also used in nuclear weapons. Iran also promised to keep enrichment levels at around 4% until 2030. By January 2016, Iran did drastically reduce the number of centrifuges installed at its two main facilities, Natanz and Fordo. The International Atomic Energy Agency also had regular access to all Iranian nuclear facilities, monitoring Tehran's compliance with the deal. At the time of the agreement, the then Obama administration believed the agreement would prevent Iran from secretly developing a nuclear weapon. By the end of 2015, the IAEA ended its decade-long investigation monitoring Iran's nuclear program, concluding there were no credible indications of weapons development. Instead, an agreement to continue a UN arms embargo on the country for up to 5 years and to uphold a UN ban on the import of ballistic missile technology for up to 8 years was added to the deal. But in May 2018, the situation changed dramatically when the Trump administration abandoned the deal, saying Iran had not disclosed a past covert nuclear weapons program to the IAEA. U.S. President Donald Trump reinstated crushing sanctions last November, targeting both Iran and any countries that trade with it. Iran's economy felt the effect almost immediately. Its currency rapidly shed value and inflation soared. And now, with Iran reacting to U.S. pressure by suspending its commitment to the deal by exceeding its previously agreed enrichment level and vowing to keep raising it every 60 days, Washington-Tehran tensions look set to worsen before they get any better. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
The final lineup has been announced for this week's Major League Baseball AllStar Game, and South Korean pitcher Hyun-jin will be in the starting lineup Wednesday, only the second Asian player to earn that distinction. Lee Min-sun reports.
South Korea's Hyun-jin has been selected as the starting pitcher for this week's Major League Baseball AllStar Game in Cleveland. At a press conference at Huntington Convention Center on Monday, Ryu said starting the All-Star Game is an honor for him and his family, and the day will be a special day for his home country. The pitcher also added that he came to America just to play baseball, but never imagined he would ever come this far when he first arrived in the U.S. The final lineup for the All-Star Game was officially announced at the press conference, but Ryu's Dodgers manager Dave Roberts, who will also serve as the National League manager, had already chosen Ryu to pitch the first inning. Roberts praised Ryu for his consistency and for being the best pitcher in the National League. Ryu leads the majors with a 1.73 ERA in 109 innings across 17 starts. He was also named the National League Pitcher of the Month in May. He will be the first South Korean player to start the All-Star Game and the second Asian pitcher to start the game. Ryu will face a team led by Boston Red Sox manager Alex Cora and Astros pitcher Justin Verlander on Wednesday morning in Cleveland. Lee Min-sun, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in said Tuesday that a fair economy starts with fair practices by public institutions, and he called on government ministries for their cooperation in building trust in the market. He was speaking at the Blue House at the third Fair Economy Strategy meeting, where he evaluated the progress made at various government agencies and public entities. He pointed to what his administration has done to increase profits for the people, the tenants, and consumers of public services and facilities. He also said efforts were made to revise contract clauses that only benefit public institutions. President Moon added that the government has guaranteed fair pay for subcontractors under the principle that benefits and risks should be shared fairly. It has also eradicated unfair practices in which institutions and private companies made horizontal contracts. Japanese media outlets, including Kyodo News Agency, were quick to cover South Korean President Moon Jae-in's first public remarks Monday on Japan's new trade restrictions, in which he urged Tokyo to withdraw them. But those reports suggest that Japan is likely to continue the pressure. Kim Yo-sun has the details.
Japan's Kyodo News Agency published an article Monday titled "South Korean President Urges Tokyo's Regulation Withdrawal, Vowing Responsive Measures." It quoted President Moon's remarks that called for Japan's withdrawal of its latest trade restrictions on South Korea. It explained this is the first public response by Moon amid the trade spat between the two neighbors. However, it said it's unclear whether the South Korean leader will be able to seek a resolution, as it's been a while since Seoul and Tokyo held a summit. The article also said President Moon vowed to take responsive measures if South Korean companies are harmed by the new trade curbs. Citing diplomatic sources, the article said Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is unlikely to change his stance even after the House of Councilors election slated for later in July. Rather, it explained Tokyo will continue to exert pressure on Seoul to resolve the issue of forced labor during World War II. Japan's NHK also dealt with President Moon's remark in detail, adding he will meet with South Korean business leaders to seek further countermeasures. Other Japanese media outlets, including the Mainichi, Yomiuri, and Asahi Shimbun, covered President Moon's remarks as well. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
South Korean and Japanese officials could sit down for high-stakes talks in the coming days on Tokyo's export restrictions of high-tech materials to South Korea. The Japanese daily Yomiuri Shimbun reported on Tuesday that the meeting could take place as early as this week in Tokyo. It's expected that Japan will stress that the restrictions are not an embargo, but a means to revise trade management. Japanese officials are also likely to insist the move does not violate WTO rules. On the other hand, according to a source at Seoul's trade ministry, South Korea is likely to raise its own questions and rebut Japan's recent suggestion that their high-tech products may be finding their way into North Korea via the South. And amid those trade tensions between Seoul and Tokyo, the vice chairman of Samsung Electronics, Lee Jae-young, has gone to Japan. Although the firm is tight-lipped about the details, Japanese news outlets are hinting what Lee might be up to. Our Ko Jin-hee reports.
Japan's Nihon Keizai Shimbun reported on Monday that Lee Jae-yong, the vice chairman of Samsung Electronics, expected to request Japanese executives to ship high-tech materials not from Japan, but from factories overseas to avoid trade restrictions. Lee arrived in Japan on Sunday, and his trip comes after Tokyo's new export restrictions against Seoul on high-tech materials used for making chips and displays took effect last week. The Japanese newspaper said that Vice Chairman Lee's expected move is to minimize a negative impact on chip production, and added that Lee is likely to discuss other possible countermeasures with business partners in Japan. NHK also covered the news and mentioned South Korean President Moon Jae-in's meeting on Wednesday with heads of major corporations threatened by the export restrictions. Samsung Electronics did not provide the details of Lee's trip, and South Korean news outlets are reporting that everything is top secret, considering that firms are caught in the middle of diplomatic issue between Seoul and Tokyo. Analysts say Lee's quick move reflects how the restrictions will hurt Korean firms in the long run, citing Korea's dependence on chip material imports from Japan. One example is the case of photoresist, or light-sensitive materials that are used in chip manufacturing. During the first 5 months of this year, more than 90% of Korea's total imports of the material came from Japan. Ko Jin-hee, Arirang News.
It's time now for an in-depth look at the market action this afternoon. And for that, I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, Global Strategist at QM Securities. Mr. Yu, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
So U.S. stocks were down quite a bit overnight now that a rate hike by the Fed looks less likely. It's been a rough week so far in Korea, too. What's the story today?
Sure. If you look at the market expectation regarding the rate cuts, by the end of this year, market was expecting that about 3 times rate cut, which is about 0.75 basis point. However, because the better than expected labor data came out last Friday, where the non-farm payroll rose 224,000 in June versus estimation of 160,000, clearly the numbers came in better than expected. This is the reason why that the rate cut might not be happening as much or as fast as market expected, and that is putting some pressures. However, though, we do expect that rate cut will happen because overall unemployment ratio rose from 3.6 to 3.7%, and also the wage increase by hourly has risen year on year by 3.1%, which is less than 3.2% estimation. So clearly the economy is slowing down somewhat, and therefore it does require rate cut. Now, with that, the overall market did corrected, but Korean market, as well as most of the Asian market, correction was much more severe than just that news of rate cut might be happening much less than expected. Main reason for that is because of the Korea and Japan having difficulties to settle, and there is a retaliation between these two countries in regards to the trade side as well. So because of this, continuation of the market correction is happening. KOSPI is down another 0.59%. KOSDAQ is down another 1.63% after more than 2% decline yesterday. So continuation of the correction is happening unless there is some kind of settlement between Korea and Japan in regards to this issue. Also, the countries such as China is getting affected as well. China yesterday fell more than 2%. Today, kind of flat. Shanghai is down about 0.18%. Shenzhen is up 0.13%. As for Japan, it did fall quite a bit yesterday, but today seems to be fairly flat. All in all, Korea, China, and Japan all are under the trade problems at this current point in time, which puts some pressures on share price performance.
Yeah, now something that fits into all these trade problems is the Korean currency, which has been on a roller coaster ride. Last month, we got almost to 1,200 won to the dollar, then back down almost to 1150. Now we're back up to around 1180. What's causing this volatility, and what's your outlook for the Korean won? Right.
If you look at Korea, Japan, and China, all these countries are heavily dependent on exports and trade. Because they manufacture goods and export it out to other countries, and that puts in quite a bit of part of the GDP numbers. So when you have issues in regards to the trade side, that export is continued to be weakening due to the dispute between the countries. So for China versus U.S. and now Korea versus Japan, these things will continue to put pressures on currency as well as the economic growth rate. Now, some people are estimating for Korean GDP growth rate to fall up to as low as 1.5%. Originally, at the beginning of the year, people were expecting to be around 2.8, 2.9% growth. Did go down to 2.5, and then went down to as low as 2% now. But some people are saying even with this new additional problem happening between Japan and Korea, the growth rate might fall to 1.5%. Clearly, that kind of low growth rate in GDP will put a dent on the currency, and this is why the currency seems to be weakening at this point in time. But clearly, though, we think that 1180 number, it seems to be maybe too weak per se, given that the economic growth rate might not be falling to 1.5%. That's probably overestimation. Year-on-year growth rate should stabilize at 1.8% growth rate, which was the first quarter of this year. So as long as 2% growth rate is expected, then currency should stabilize. But for the time being, the volatility will be expected due to continuation of trade dispute.
Right. Well, Korean industry is worried about the trade dispute. The idea that this might be expanded to things like cars and steel. How are the markets of both countries reacting to this issue, and how big of an impact is it really having?
Well, clearly, it can be a quite significant impact if this retaliation between two countries continues. We need to have the settlement between these two countries in regards to the trade side. But obviously, Japanese government is linking that up with the non-trade issues. The escalation between two countries has happened because of the disagreement in regards to the two countries in regards to the war settlement. So Japan is saying that they need to remove that from Korea in order for them to not charge any additional tariffs or not selling these materials for semiconductor side. So tension seems to continue to escalate because two sides seem to show a strong stance. They're not really, putting it down to the much minor level. So if there is additional measures come out to retaliate further to auto and steel sector, that could be very negative for Korean economy as well. So we need to see some kind of settlement happening between two countries. We do think that, though, they will do so because the pressure from U.S. will rise. If the production regarding the semiconductor business is really less than expected, that will jack up the price level, and it could create inflationary pressure for U.S. as well as other major countries. So some of the pressure will happen from U.S. side to Japan to change this current policies, as well as Korea, coming in less aggressive in regards to this war damages claim side. So we would like to see some of the measures being settled in the future, but for the time being, you need a little bit more of escalation happening because they need to show exactly how strong they are at this time. But at the end of the story, we do think that over the next few month period, these two countries will come into some kind of agreement. And after that, maybe Korea might be moving more aggressive in terms of localizing their parts. But for the time being, they both sides understand what the damage is at this point in time.
Got it. All right, Mr. Yu, that's where we're going to have to leave it today. Thank you very much for coming on. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you very much.
Now, monsoon season has arrived in South Korea, and the high temperatures and stifling humidity can sharply increase joint pain and stiffness in people with arthritis. Our Park Se-young has more on what can be done to lessen that pain.
This 80-year-old woman has been suffering from arthritis for more than 20 years. Around this time of the year, the weather is particularly harsh on her joints.
Both my knees, hips, and back hurt more if it rains or is cloudy.
High temperatures and humidity are associated with increased joint pain and stiffness. Sweating releases synovial fluids, which are lubricants around the joints, and this increases irritation from friction. Low barometric pressure during the monsoon season also increases internal pressure in the joints and causes swelling. And the cold air from air conditioners causes muscles to contract, which results in more pain. Doing nothing can result in joint deterioration and lead to loss of function, which is why experts recommend light exercise.
It's better to avoid exercises like walking upstairs or hiking. It's important to strengthen the muscles through exercises that are easy on the joints, like flatland walking, swimming, stationary bike riding, and aqua aerobics.
Experts say light exercise not only reduces arthritis pain, but also helps to prevent arthritis and slow its progression. Arthritis patients are also recommended to protect their knees from cold air by using cover-ups or blankets. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
That's all for now. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.
그때요 준양에는